So I got a chunk of what I believe to be blue pine here. I'm not actually entirely sure what the hell it is, but milling this thing out and what have you, and I found a little nail in there with the chain, and I felt it happen, let off the throttle, and then actually just got back into the throttle again because it was actually like still cutting really nice. I can't tell the difference. And so the chain that I'm using is Stihl RMX, or 33 RMX, if I'm not mistaken, the Stihl ripping chain. And I've looked through the teeth here, or the cutters. I can't find one that's all that damaged. I'll go through the chain more carefully later and look at things more carefully later, but I honestly thought that was pretty darn impressive to hit the nail. See, where is it? It's right there. And continue on with that. It still, still cuts just fine, and still looks just fine too. So, yeah, steel chain is more expensive, but I think it's worth it. So I was wrong. I was mistaken. That saw that was in the previous clip has got 36 RMX, and I guess I should go back and double check that, but that's 36 gauge steel ripping chain. This saw here has got 33 RS full chisel normal crosscut chain that I ground to 10 degrees, and I did the like kind of Grandberg thing here. And I just found another nail in this blue pine. So I've done 2 cuts on the top, and then I've taken the edges off of it. That fucking ripping chain seems to be a much harder material than standard crosscut chain is. I guess I'll play around with that more later, but there's not really any daylight left anymore. Although the phone compensates for the lack of light pretty well. But so here's where I hit the nail with the 33 RS chain, and I hope it comes across, but the cut quality went to shit versus what it was doing earlier after it hit that nail. And this 33 RS chain, it looks like, just even looking at it quickly here, it looks like this chain took far more damage than the ripping chain. But I'll get everything inside here, and obviously I got to sharpen the chains, so I'll take a better look inside. So a smart person would have quit while they were ahead, but because I don't fall into that demographic, here we are. So I hit a third nail. Well, not third nail, it's the same one. This is this board that I hit with the full chisel chain. I hit it again. I hit whatever this is again. I'm assuming this is a nail, but it's not very deep. Looks like it ends right there. But what's really interesting, I find, is that this time I have a what used to be a 33 RM, if I'm not mistaken, chain, but a full house semi-chisel steel chain. And it's very interesting to me that this time I did not feel that nail in the slightest. Like there was no, hard impact or whatever. Typically it's when you're going along and you hit something, it Well, feels like you hit a fucking nail with a chain. There's a big jolt, and you can, kind of shakes the saw in the mill and what have you, and then it kind of continues on. This time, I didn't feel it for shit. And the only thing that it did was really, really slow down the cut. So, and it changed the profile of the wood. And funny enough, it's actually smoother on this side. But it dulled the it massively slowed down the cut. It was cutting way, way, way slower after I hit that. But on this chain, it doesn't look like, you don't visually see all that much of a difference versus that full chisel chain. And that full chisel chain was milling pretty fast. I think the Stihl ripping chain was the fastest of the chains, but I don't have a Stihl like the RMX. I don't have the dedicated Stihl ripping chain for this bar, because this bar is 50 gauge and that ripping chain is 63 gauge. Oh, and I guess I should say, I misspoke a bunch of shit in the last two clips there. Just, I don't know, tired and bullshit, whatever. But, yeah, I probably should have quit when I was ahead, but at the same time, it's really interesting to see the difference between these chains here. And so I guess now that we have daylight, this here was done with the full chisel chain, and then you can see, hit the nail there, and the cut quality dropped off. This side was that semi-chisel chain that it's almost smoother after I hit the nail. And then this side of the beam here is the RMX chain, and it really doesn't look any different to me. And this chain, the RMX chain, I did feel the impact, but after the impact, I couldn't tell the difference in how the saw was cutting. It was really quite interesting. Okay, so I got all three chains off of the saw now, and from left to right here we got the full chisel, like 33 RS. In the center is the ripping chain, 36 RMX, and then on the right is the semi-chisel 33 RM that I've filed to 10 degrees. And so I guess to start with the full chisel chain here, I marked out a couple cutters that were the worst condition. And it damaged a number of cutters on this chain. Like there's probably a dozen or more cutters that look like that. So that's the full chisel chain. on the semi-chisel chain. Oh, and yeah, on the full chisel and the semi-chisel here, you can see half the cutters. I've cut essentially all of the top plate off of it. I guess evidently that's something that Granberg does, and I decided to do it here just to try it out and see how I like it. It definitely reduces the power that you need to pull a given chain. I don't necessarily know that it does anything for cut quality, but it's just something that I decided to do. This chain, all the cutters are completely intact, simply because this is a very short chain. This is only a 72 driver, and so I didn't really see the need to do anything with it. But if we look here, this is definitely this one here is by far the worst damaged cutter. And if we look at the cutters right next to that one, they're in surprisingly good shape. And so, like I said, this chain, I didn't cut down any of the cutters on it. But this one here I did. And the reason is that this one here is a longer loop of chain. This is for a 28-inch bar versus just a little 20-inch bar. But when I was doing this, it felt like the Stihl, like the material that the chain is made out of, and this is that RMX chain again, it feels like the material that this chain is made out of is much harder. And so I don't have any hardness tester files at the moment, but I will get some at some point. But I figured what I would do is sharpen these different chains on the Stihl USG grinder here and see if there's any noteworthy difference with the chains. This one here is the 33 RM chain, and this one I'm going to sharpen at 15 degrees because I want this individual chain to be more aggressive, and so I guess I'll try 15 degrees and see how that goes. But so you kind of got to watch how this one went, and then I'll bring you back when we get the full chisel chain. So here is the full chisel chain, and it goes like much of the same, except that I'm doing this one at 10 degrees as opposed to 15 on the last one. And yes, I know the grinding wheel is rather loaded up. I didn't actually realize how loaded up it was until putting the video camera on it. And now that I've already done the one chain like that, I don't want to take the dressing wheel to it to clean it up, because I want to be as consistent with this as possible to see if there's any difference, any noticeable difference when we go to sharpen the RMX chain. And I'll come back with the RMX chain. And here is the RMX ripping chain. This is actually the first time I've sharpened any of the RMX chain that I have. It definitely holds an edge a very, very long time. And like, you know, shit, this chain here, I was kind of debating about not sharpening it because it was still cutting just fine after hitting that nail. But I figured that I probably should, just for the sake of the video, really. But as far as how it was performing after hitting the nail, it was just fine. And this seems different to me, the way that it grinds. I don't know how it feels different necessarily. I don't know, like, I don't know what about it necessarily feels, but I don't know, maybe that's just me. What do you think? That didn't quite clean up that tooth all the way, but I suppose that's okay. You can see there's a fuckload of sap and shit all over this chain. Oops. Playing around with a bunch of functions here that I don't really know what the fuck they do. It's kind of cool to see that up close like that. As I'm getting older, my eyes are getting worse. Kind of like a nice magnifying glass. Fuck. Getting old's a bitch, I know that. I didn't actually look up the specs of what like angles and shit that Stihl recommends sharpening this at. I just left the grinder set the way I was sharpening the other chains. And I guess whether that's right or wrong or indifferent is a topic for another day. Well, I don't know, I'll do a couple more like that, I suppose. But yeah, so far I have been very happy with this chain. I've been watching some other people's videos and what have you, and from some of the other videos that I've seen, it seems like some people need to sharpen their chain for ripping essentially like every tank of fuel, from what one guy was saying. And I'm sure obviously it depends on what type of wood you have and how dirty it is and how good a job you did sharpening the chain, and 1,000 different factors. But I'm sure the quality of the chain also has a pretty big factor in that. And this this ripping chain so far, like I said, has been fantastic. I think one of my other RMX chains, I've probably gone through probably 10 or 12 tanks of fuel in it. Mind you, milling pine, but that one chain that I'm talking about doesn't really show any wear on it at all, like any dulling of the cutters. So I'll just keep using it and see how it goes. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting how the different chains reacted to hitting the nail there. And this has certainly turned into a much longer video than I was anticipating. But I guess that happens sometimes.